Live breaking news from your local news channel.
Good morning and thanks for joining us in this special news channel report. I'm Joe Butita. Santa Barbara County Fire Department is holding a remembrance ceremony today to honor those lives that were taken on September 11th, 19 years ago today. That ceremony just getting underway. Let's listen in.
Firefighters, law enforcement, and EMS professionals who gave their lives to save others. Please welcome Fire Chief Mark HARTWIG.
Thank you, Daniel. Thank you, Sheriff Brown. Today, this 9/11, we remember. We remember the actions of rescue personnel, first responders, fire, law enforcement at the World Trade Center, at the Pentagon, and in the skies over Shanksville, Pennsylvania. I remember this day 19 years ago vividly. I remember calling my wife as I watched the towers burn, knowing that it was an act, an intentional act, and asking her to keep the kids home, only to hear her wonder why I was so concerned. I remember as I worked in training as a young captain, the towers burn, wondering what kind of tactics would be used to put out such an inferno, knowing that each and every one of those firefighters that were in those towers were trained to put out such a large fire. Knowing, even as they burned, that there were resources rolling in to that scene and making access to the fire floor. Knowing that the command staff, because of the way they were trained, were set up in the lobby of those two buildings, coordinating the attack on the fire floors and the rescues that were happening. I remember it all vividly. This week, the Fire Department of New York added 27 names to the wall. These 19 years later, that brings the number to 227 firefighters who have died of illnesses related to the rescue and recovery efforts at the World Trade Center site. There are 241 law enforcement officers who've been added to the wall. It didn't just stop then. It continues to affect families and lives today. We remember the 343 firefighters, as I mentioned, that were busy and active rescuing and guiding people down, making access to the fire floor in order to engage the firefight. 37 Port Authority police officers, 23 police officers from NYPD who willingly gave their life to save another that day. That event was no respecter of rank or persons. On that day, that morning, Peter J. Gansey, Jr. was chief of the 15,000-member Fire Department of New York. He died that day, putting his life between danger and those that needed his help. He was recognized earlier in his career for saving the life of a 5.5-year-old during a structure fire in New York. When he was asked what compelled him to enter that building to save that 5.5-year-old, knowing that nobody else would go in and that it was not safe for him to do so. He said this: when a firefighter realizes that someone is being robbed of life by fire, adrenaline and determination replace any thoughts of personal safety. As we remember and honor those that gave their life today, even those and also those that helped their fellow co-worker navigate that treacherous flight down those many stairs, we honor and remember those of that day. We will never forget.
"19 years ago today, America and the world was changed forever. Changed in how we travel, changed in how we protect ourselves, changed in what we believe is important, changed in how we live. Since that infamous date, our great American military, intelligence services, and law enforcement authorities have worked smarter, harder, and in partnership to keep America safe. Our military forces took to the skies, to the seas, and to foreign lands to conduct a global war on terrorism. Working closely with our trusted allied partners, our intelligence services developed information that supports international and domestic military and law enforcement operations to keep us safe. Our law enforcement guardians have kept a vigilant watch on our homeland and have moved swiftly to thwart threats against our communities. And these efforts have been successful. There have been no other major terrorist attacks against Americans on U.S. soil since September 11, 2001. September 11, 2001 was one of our worst days. You just heard Chief HARTWIG talk about the terrible toll that it took on first responders, firefighters, and law enforcement officers alike. It was the darkest day in American history in terms of loss of life for both firefighters and law enforcement officers. But it also brought out the best in us as Americans. Countless people were inspired to join the military or law enforcement so that they could protect other Americans. Children whose parents were taken from them have now grown up into adults themselves, and many of them have dedicated their lives to the service of others. All of us who remember September 11 have grown stronger and closer together as a result of it. As we observe Patriots' Day and all that it represents, let us honor and be grateful for the value of life, for those who were loved and lost, for our nation's unparalleled resilience, and for the unbeatable and unstoppable nature of the American spirit. Let us remember the heroism and self-sacrifice of the firefighters and law enforcement officers who ran into those burning buildings at Ground Zero that day when everyone else was trying to get away. Let us look back with pride, and as we deal with that lump in our throats, with those tears in our eyes, let us remember that we have a duty to never forget them. So today, let us honor those who were lost. May their families find comfort and peace, and may their memory continue to inspire all of us to be our best. May God bless them, and may God continue to bless the United States of America.
That concludes our ceremony. Thank you very much for coming.
You've been watching the Santa Barbara County Fire Department September 11th Remembrance Ceremony, which is being held differently this year due to the coronavirus pandemic. We'll have a full report tonight with a look back at this ceremony, and that's coming up on your local news channel at 5 and 6 o'clock. We'll also have a recap at 11 a.m. on midday. Thanks for joining us.